We have liftoff. Hello and welcome back to the Alexander Society podcast. I'm your host Tim, who's here today to accidentally get their friend involved with Diddy, and with me is my co-host Derek, who's going to release a song about me getting shot right after it happens.
Yeah, I already knew both of those happened. I'm not surprised. I honestly kind of saw that coming from a mile away. You using those?
I mean, it's right up my alley. So Derek, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing all right. I feel, even though this wasn't technically my episode, I still feel woefully underprepared for it for some reason. I don't know why.
So Derek, what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, what am I? Well, I didn't ask you how you're doing.
We didn't? Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Today at work was really, really easy. And then I left I thought it was an hour and a half early, but apparently it was 2 hours early because I had a lot of overtime. I don't know why. I was paying attention. I had my overtime at that point. I was like, well, okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's fun to realize that you have more of something good than you realize you did, regardless of what, money, overtime, vacation days. So what am I drinking tonight, actually?
Yes, what are you drinking?
Okay, so for my sipper, I got Skydance, Diamond in the Buff. It's a Vienna Lager, 5.2%. It's a 16-ounce can, so it's nice and beefy. Beautiful, gorgeous artwork as always.
Agreed.
And this one is extra special. This looks like, now that I actually look at it, it's giving me Knights of Columbus vibes. But
it gave me very Crusaders vibes, personally.
Yeah, it's still very pretty. I haven't tried it yet. Here, hold on. Yeah, it's like a really rich lager. It's not. It's it's you know what a lager tastes like. It's a really rich lager. It's not too light.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then for my shots, this is gonna be fucking wild. This is gonna be so wild. I don't know what to expect from this.
This is either gonna be amazingly delicious or amazingly disgusting.
Yeah, it's gonna be life altering in some way. I just don't know which direction yet. And I'm really gambling here. So this is Doughball. I believe it's from the same people who make Butterball.
Packaging looks the same.
Yeah, and it's a cookie dough whiskey.
What's its percentage?
It's 35%, 70 proof. And yeah, I don't know what to expect from this. This is gonna be fun. Anyway, Tim, what are you drinking?
Well, I've been wanting to get more from Nothing's Left, and I all the liquor stores I've been to, which is not much, didn't have it till I decided to drive out a little bit out of my way, but not horribly out of my way, to one over by a Target near-ish me, and I got Yabba Dabba Brew, which is a Fruity Pebbles sour beer.
Yeah.
6% alcohol, and I'm kind of disappointed because to me, specifically me, I know my taste buds are fucked, it tastes like an IPA.
Yeah, that is very disappointing to hear. That is very unfortunate.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. And then I wanted to find a rum, but that liquor store didn't have anything that I either hadn't already tried or looked good enough for this episode. So I went back to the original vodka, 40% from last episode.
Fair. Wasn't that? What did you think about? Did you say that you didn't like that stuff? Did you?
It was a vodka.
It was just vodka. There's nothing special. Okay, fair.
It's not like it's what was that brand that Jeff or Mitri got us when we were underaged? It tasted like rubbing alcohol, that one brand. I'm like, as long as it's not that, I can live.
Oh yeah, you go to any liquor store and find the cheapest bottle of vodka you can find, and it'll
Burnett's, the big bottle of Burnett's.
Oh yeah, Burnett's is terrible. The only reason we drank Burnett's in college is because it was cheap.
Because it was cheap.
Yeah, no, you don't get Burnett's for the flavor.
Yeah, I learned that in college.
Anyways, we're gonna go ahead and take a shot now.
Cheers.
Prost.
We are talking about East Coast versus West Coast. A pretty big moment in the rap industry / Black history, especially with the mark, both Tupac specifically and Notorious B.I.G. Left on the Energy. We're talking about specifically the beef from their angles. I'm not going to get into a lot of the nitty gritty on a lot of stuff just because this isn't an episode on Tupac, which I almost made this just an episode on Tupac and then just made the beef a part of it, but I didn't feel like that was quite the kind of angle we should take with a mystery docket.
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah, because he Tupac, he's there's whole bunch to his life.
There's a lot of stuff there. I just I didn't want to make this like a history episode like we usually like one of yours, an Alexander article. I wanted this to be feel like a mystery docket.
It's like there's a lot of like revolutionary history in there. That's kind of more my wheelhouse.
That's kind of what I thought. But so given just a little bit of background on Tupac and Biggie. Tupac was born on June 16th, 1971 in New York. He was born as, how did you pronounce the last name? I mean, the first name again? Leslie Parrish Crooks is, I think, how it's pronounced.
Yeah, Lassane Parish Crooks.
Leslie Parrish Crooks. He was actually renamed by his mother, not himself, which is what I always assumed. Like, he gave himself that name at the age of 1, and he was renamed after Tupac Amaru II, the last descendant of the Incan ruler. With the last descendant of the Incan ruler. I was really surprised at that. Derek, on our first attempt at recording this, kind of went over that, but it didn't sound good, so we decided to give it a second shot. Both of his parents were very heavily involved in the Black Panther Party. His mother was actually part of the Panther 21 criminal trial, where she was acquitted of 150 different charges. And what little know I know about the Panther 21 criminal trial, apparently it was 21 people who were charged over what was supposed to be like a terrorist incident, but every single one of them was acquitted of all charges. So it was probably a setup.
Yeah, just real quick, imagine how corrupt your police force and your investigation has to be to have to acquit members of a black nationalist organization implicated in a terroristic threat. Like, imagine how badly you have to botch that investigation and how explicitly corrupt you have to be. I mean, that's wild. That's crazy.
It is. So you want to give the audience a little bit of background on the Black Panthers Forest, Derek?
Yeah, yeah. So the Black Panther Party was an organization that was formed in the late 1960s in the midst of like the all of the new left, your student radicals, your anti-war movement, your early gay rights movement, all of sort of that milieu. And the Black Panther Party was sort of like the injection of the Black Power movement and the Black nationalist movement into that sort of like cultural like soup. It was founded in Oakland, California in the late 60s by these two guys named Huey Newton and Bobby Seale. And the basic concept was basically they took a look at like what black America looked like in the 1960s, which was, you know, still ahead, even though like Jim Crow had or segregation is technically on its way out, but like there were still like racist cops, racist judges, uh, racist every economic institution in the country basically, and black people were still some of the poorest people in the country, and they were still effectively and to this day still an underclass of the United States. And so basically these two guys who were both Marxists took a look at that and were like, well, we've got these communities and we have really strong like community ties in amongst like the urban black working class. And so we can basically form networks of like mutual aid and revolutionary education and things like that and connect them all and use that to form these black communities into a vanguard for proletarian revolution in the United States and anti-imperialist revolution more broadly across the entire world. And that was the general concept, but it really began at a practical level as like just a community improvement organization basically, even though what they're really known for today is standing around cops with guns, which is something that they did do and was very important to their revolutionary activity. Was they had like basically these programs are like cop watching or police the police. They had a few different names, They would basically go out and they would like go on patrol, and if they saw a cop harassing a black person or just like like pulling a black person over or anything like that, they just hang out with guns, like guns out in the open, and what it stare down the cop, make sure the cop didn't knew that like if he tried anything like there'd be issues, and it was very effective at getting cops to behave, and so cops hated it naturally. And it led to a couple things. The first thing is that it helped make the Black Panther Party very popular, and very prominent, because a bunch of like well dressed, well educated, or well learned like black men carrying guns and intimidating cops is going to draw a lot of attention in American press. And the second thing is like it's that amongst with like a lot of their social programs that they did, like a lot of their mutual aid stuff. They did like free breakfast for kids. They had like community medical clinics, things like that. Made them very popular in black communities. And an armed group of black men becoming very popular in black communities while talking about revolution scares the shit out of a bunch of very powerful white people. And so eventually the Black Panther Party reaches the zenith of their power in about 1970 with about 5,000 official members and thousands more affiliated like individuals like across the country, becoming like a very prominent radical social force, both in the black community and in the broader like sort of radical milieu of that era. And then they got enough attention that J. Edgar Hoover decided to put a stop to that. Ended up orchestrating a bunch of assassinations of their highest ranking members, including both Bobby Seale and Huey Newton. And then eventually, like one of their big up and coming leaders, Fred Hampton in Chicago. And then after that, they used COINTELPRO tactics to basically like cause a whole bunch of infighting within the organization, which kind of degenerated and kind of like broke the organization apart in a steady process through the 70s until it was finally effectively defunct and wasn't able to accomplish its proper mission, and it was formally disbanded in 1984. But they're still very important, and like in relatively recent black history, like that was only like 50 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. Like there are people alive today who were Black Panthers and are still like, kicking around, talking about it, and still in a lot of cases organizing, and those ideas are still out there, and and their legacy is very important in the black community today. They're still beloved both in the black community and amongst like radical circles in the United States.
So, Tupac grew up for his first 13 years in East Harlem, Manhattan. And then at 13, he moved to Baltimore, Maryland. He does a lot of moving after 13. I think he moves like 3 or 4 times, if not more. I didn't count it exactly. Then in 10th grade, he got heavily into the arts. During this time, he established his lifelong friendship with Jada Pinkett Smith. That is questionable if it both had feelings or not, but
yeah, still that's a wild connection.
Yeah, it's wild. During his time in 10th grade, he went to a school for the arts, and he studied acting, poetry, jazz, and ballet. He ended up doing a lot of like Shakespeare plays during this time, which I like I said, I didn't know he was into the theater arts that young. I knew he did acting later in his career, but I didn't know he was a theater kid.
Yeah, that when you put it that way, like Tupac Shakur being a theater kid is actually really funny. It's in
And if you actually know real theater kid like stereotypes, honestly, it fits.
just imagining Tupac Shakur showing up at IHOP at 3 a.m. after
After opening night.
After opening night, and he's still in his costume. And he and his like gaggle of like 3 other theater kids are just the fucking loudest people in the entire restaurant. Oh, so many Homestuck references.
I am glad I still have been free from Homestuck.
Yeah, this is the first time I've thought about Homestuck in like 5 years, and I'm better off for having. I'm worse off now that I've thought about it, but I was better off for a little while.
During this time, he got into beatboxing. Um, he won competitions for the school's best rapper. But that's kind of like I do want to like kind of mention really quick his like interests, inspirations, kind of like what he listened to at the time, which was Kate Bush, Culture Club, Sinead O'Connor, and U2.
Yeah, fascinating list for a hip hop artist.
Oh yeah. Then moving on to Biggie. So he was born Christopher George Luttrell Wallace on May 21st, 1972 in Brooklyn, New York. His mother was a preschool teacher, and you were right in our original recording. She was a Jehovah's Witness. He was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and then his father was a welder and politician.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a couple months before his third birthday, his father went to go get milk.
Ooh. Yeah. Disappointing.
Very disappointing. I wanted to make a little bit light of that, not just because of how sad it is and how unfortunately common it was and is still today. Due to the influence of the 80s and 90s crack epidemic, Biggie really gets into drug dealing, and he was fixated in it before he really actually got into it. Then at the age of 12, he had a friend who got him into buying and selling weed. Apparently, he used the roof of his apartment to hide his money. His mother didn't know until he was 20, and he was an honor student. I missed that the first time.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing about these two guys is these two guys were
Smart. Really fucking smart.
like world class intellects. Like two of the smartest people of their era, genuinely. Like just not just as artistic minds, but just as just the way that their brains work. They were actual certified geniuses.
Okay, so we know a little bit more about the music, just what I've been given articles. I'm sure there's more places out there to find who influenced Tupac, but Biggie just has a bigger list on the places I found. So Biggie was influenced in his early life by artists like The Dramatics, Blue Magic, Teddy Pendergrass, Stevie Wonder, and Marvin Gaye. And there was actually even more that I missed the first time go around, Derek. He was also well acquainted with Parliament Funderick. I have no idea.
No, never heard of it.
I've never even heard of that. No. Earth, Wind, and Fire, Kool and the Gang, and Chic. And then when he was visiting Jamaica, he was influenced by its native genres, including, it's just called the music of Jamaica, apparently, which kind of encapsulates like jazz, reggae, soul, and minto. And he also listened to Run DMC and LL Cool J, apparently.
Yeah, yeah. So I really need to listen to more of Biggie's music because I really like what I've heard. I just need to look up more of it. His music was really grim. It was really dark.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate because he took like a bunch of inspirations from like a lot of the stuff, like a lot of stuff that you listed out. It's very like high energy, very upbeat music. And he took those sort of stylistic and concepts and kind of molded them into this music that he used to express like kind of his darker, more depressed background and put that into music, and it came out brilliant. He's a brilliant artist. I love Biggie stuff. like I said, I need to listen to more of it genuinely.
Honestly, I just need to listen to a lot of older rap in general. Like, I will say this, I'm not super acquainted with hip hop and rap and a lot of that stuff, especially older stuff. Not because I think it's bad, but just because I'm one of those listeners that I don't really interact with new music a lot. What I'll do is I'll find a playlist and I'll listen to it on repeat or whatever, or I'll find songs I like and mix it in all together in like a big playlist. But like I don't seek out a lot of new music often, or when I do, like you know how streaming services will have that like a shuffle play and you'll get a new artist. I don't pay attention when it's on the screen, so I don't know who that artist is.
Yeah, and there's something like just in regards to like hip hop with like my sort of relationship to it and hip hop and rap, and for the longest time I didn't really give it much credit. I didn't really give it like the due that it deserved because I'd only really ever been, classic white guy thing. I'd only ever really been exposed to Eminem, and I thought that it was like, I respected like what the musicality for what it was, but I was really just a fan of like the crudeness and how fast it was. in regards to like Eminem. It wasn't until I started listening to MF Doom and I realized, oh, this music requires a level of intellect that you kind of need to you you need a level of intellect that's kind of beyond most musicians in order to kind of work with this music. The
Yeah.
like the way that you balance like rhythmic lyricism and poetry with like a steady beat, and the way that those two kind of interact, you need a specific sort of mindset that I just cannot wrap my head around, and takes intellect that just blows my mind. And once I realized that through like by listening to MF Doom and kind of like picking out like how he was doing his rhymes and how that kind of related to like the music, like the instrumentals and like the mix, it made me it made me start to think differently, not just about rap and hip hop in general, but just like all music. Like there's a lot of stuff that I used to really like that I don't like anymore because now I'm analyzing parts of the music that I just never realized were there before, and realizing that, oh, there's
It's kind of the opposite reason why, like, yes, I've sat down and watched music videos or watched videos where you see the lyrics, but like a lot of different, like, foreign songs, I'm not sitting there and analyzing them because I don't understand what they're saying. I just enjoy the beat, which I feel like a lot of people do that with even music that they know it's in their first language or a language they understand, just because they're not, like, sitting there and thinking on the lyrics or the meaning of any of it. And I'm just like, wow. And sometimes you just sit there and like look and like ruminate on some of the lyrics, and it just like hits you like, holy shit, that's deep.
honestly like analyzing like rap and hip hop a little bit more closely help give me the kind of like musical appreciation that I needed to get into like extreme metal, because it helped me kind of like pick out parts of the music that I would have never noticed otherwise. That I realized, like, if I like now that I hear it, I can't unhear it, and the way that it forms together really, I just really appreciate. I can appreciate a lot better now, and it's why I'm so much more to like death metal and black metal and those sorts of genres. Just
Well, like I've always like what took me so long to get into metal and like metalcore specifically and stuff like that was like I couldn't understand it. I don't mean that like it's illegible. Like I wasn't able to sit down and like kind of like listen to it the right way to understand it. And after like getting tubbing my toe in the water, listening to stuff, and then slowly working my way up into harder stuff, I was able to actually like start to understand it. Like sometimes, yeah, it goes too fast for me on new stuff or whatever, but like some of that stuff is a lot deeper than you think, and a lot of just call it screamo or blah 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 blah. Like it's a lot deeper than that sometimes.
yeah, like one of my favorite bands right now is Frenolith. They actually just released a new album last week that I absolutely adore, and it's just classic death metal. It's just wall of sound with continuous blast beats and some like really sick riffs. And when I first listened to Frenolith like 5 years ago, I was like, I don't really get. There's not a lot of like variance to it. And then I went back and listened to it like more recently, like last year, and I was like, oh my god, there's so much creative stuff they're doing in this. There's so much like genuinely innovative stuff that I'm hearing coming out of this that's really entertaining and really fun to listen to. Like it's and then like combine that with like like really dark sort of like esoteric themes and things like that, which are right in my wheelhouse, and it just makes it a really fun experience to listen to, and I appreciate it a lot better, and I wouldn't have gotten to that point without MF Doom and just hip hop rap in general.
I keep meaning to listen to some MF Doom, but I haven't yet.
It's oh dude, it's so good. He's so good, man. Anyways,
Alrighty, getting on into the actual beef. But before we can actually talk about beef, we got to talk about a falling out. So Tupac and Biggie met in 1993 when Biggie had asked a drug dealer to introduce him to Tupac while they were at a party at the same party. That makes so much more sense than I just knew he asked a drug dealer to introduce him. I was like, how is this random drug dealer going to know Tupac? You know? And apparently, out of that, they sat down. Like I think this party wasn't like a big party. I think it was more like the cookout. I think it was the cookout, kind of like that, like a big version. And I think Tupac was cooking because it mentions steak, fries, all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, I bet Tupac made a mean steak. Oh man.
Oh yeah, ain't no way he burnt his steak. Ain't no way he ever cooked a well done steak.
Perfect medium rare. Maybe a little bit of sear on it so that if you're more on the well done side, you can still enjoy it. Man, he would have been that generous too. He would have been that thoughtful.
Oh yeah. And this led to like a beautiful blossoming friendship between the two. Like they would make a point when they were in each other's cities to go visit each other each time. Like Biggie was known to have like when he was in town to crash on Pac's couch. Like they were tight. They were tight to the point where Biggie asked Pac to be his manager.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Tupac didn't want to mix friendship and business.
Smart.
So he pointed him to a predator, Diddy, to be his manager.
Yeah, they might have still fallen out if Tupac had been Biggie's manager. They might have.
Could you imagine the whole East Coast West Coast beef doesn't ever happen? They both live long lives. We get to 2023 and the Diddy shit comes out.
Yeah, imagine the number of deaths in the East Coast West Coast rivalry that happen indirectly downstream because of what Diddy does to these two guys. Like,
I know someone mentioned it, and I don't know the nuances or details to like sell the theory, but I have a big feeling like Diddy was behind a lot of that shit. Like, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Who was it? I think it was Eminem. He even put it in a song that Diddy got Pac killed.
yeah, that's from what I understand.
I wouldn't be surprised if both deaths were Diddy's fault.
And absolutely, that sounds like something Diddy would have done because.
Especially knowing this fucking hundreds of bottles of lube, motherfucker.
Oh, waterfalls of lube is crazy.
That still fucking baffles me. I bet you he had to have a plumber on contract.
You know what I like to imagine is that it was just in like individual Johnson & Johnson bottles, but he'd
I want to think they're 1 ounce bottles and he just has hundreds of 1 ounce bottles.
Yeah, but they're like 1 ounce bottles, but he'll like open one up, use it once, and then throw it aside, and then instead of using it again, just opens it. So they're all like not just 1 ounce bottles, but open with a little bit out.
He has a creepy collection of used 1 ounce bottles too.
Yeah. He keeps them as trophies. Oh.
Did you hear what his lawyers tried to claim? Oh, it was an accidental bulk buy from Costco. And Costco's like, he does not have an account with us. We don't sell that.
He couldn't have just said Amazon. Like, everybody knows you can buy like gallons of lube from Amazon. You can buy a pallet of lube on Amazon and have it shipped directly to your front door.
But I'm pretty sure they shipped that in a 55-gallon drum. Because I remember it was either Eli or the leprechaun, Andrew. I don't think you got to meet him because he graduated with me and Brandon.
Andrew, no, he was my drum major.
He stayed another year? Interesting. He was in a group chat with us on Snapchat for a little bit. Him or Eli sent us an Amazon listing that it went from like a 6 ounce bottle all the way up to a 55-gallon drum of lube on the Amazon listing. And we're like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
This was back when we were still getting used to Amazon selling bulk stuff. It used to be Amazon just did the small shit, and then they put that shit on there.
I still remember when Amazon just sold books.
I remember when Amazon intentionally undercut a small diaper business so they could become a mega corporation.
Can you imagine what it would feel like to just, like, take a dip in, like, a 55-gallon drum of lube?
No, thank you.
And you're never getting out of that again. Like, you're not getting out of the barrel.
No. The only way you're getting out is if you left your hands above the lube. That or if you knock it over.
No, because when you sit in it, you're gonna like it's gonna like overflow and spill over the side. So now you don't have anything to grip. If you try to climb out, your hands are gonna get lubey.
Lubey? Is that your trademark word? Lubey?
I hate that word. I hate that. I don't want to trademark it. I want to kill it. I hate that I made up that word.
They were actually so good of friends, in fact, that together at the 1993 Budweiser Superfest in New York City's Madison Square, they freestyled together.
Genuinely tragic.
I want to see the timeline where they stayed absolutely tight as hell. I want to see that timeline. They had in between the introduction, and then this next big event in November of '94. They had small like skirmishes or whatever, but it didn't really turn into a beef, and they were still kind of friends, but like you're kind of sore at them, or like you're a little bit on the outs kind of thing, but not anything like major.
Yeah, they were kind of having like two friends were mad at each other basically.
Yeah, yeah, it was a respectful disagreement. It didn't ruin the friendship, from what I understand, but on November 30th of '94 came. Tupac and Biggie were in New York, and they were supposed to work on a project for Little Sean together. Little Sean and everyone else were already upstairs. Like, Tupac was the last one to get there. Tupac arrives, and as he's getting ready to head upstairs, he's robbed at gunpoint and shot 4 times. Survives, no big deal. But with the way the deal happened, because Tupac was in town to record with another artist, and his manager kind of like metaphorically twisted his arm to get him to go and do this recording session. So Tupac kind of felt like this was set up, and he thought that Biggie and Diddy had set up the shooting.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, when I heard this story for the first time, after he was shot, Tupac was like screaming like Biggie did this, like this is Biggie's fault. That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true, but
I don't know anything about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he at least suspected not long after that, because 2 months after being shot, do you know what Biggie releases?
oh yeah, what's the song called again?
Who Shot Ya?
Biggie, come on, man.
Biggie claims that it was just a unfortunate coincidence.
You know,
I don't care if it was or it wasn't. You do not release a song called that with either a friend or a former friend having been shot 2 months before. I would say like, hey, bro, or at least I would have gotten hold of him. Like, hey, this is going to look really bad. Here's what happened.
it's like it's like releasing a song called "There Goes the Towers" in like February of 2002.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing, at least for Tupac. So during this time after the shooting and after recovering, Tupac actually gets sentenced to jail for sexual misconduct.
Yeah, I've heard that about him.
Sexual assault. He was actually originally brought up on sodomy charges. It basically what was claimed is like he raped a girl or whatever, along with 2 of his friends, and I believe the friends actually did it, and he was just like they had like a suite or whatever.
Which, that still makes him like if he was there, it still makes him complicit.
He felt like shit. Like he said, like he mentions in interviews afterwards, like he's like, I failed. I had a job to do and I didn't do it.
Yeah, that's all well and good, but also some rapists cry after they commit their crime. So like fuck you, dude.
What he was in jail for is kind of like, okay, what the fuck? He got a 1.5 years for groping.
Okay.
He got acquitted on everything that they were accusing of him of that night, him specifically, except for grabbing the victim's butt.
The more I think about it, fair.
A 1.5 years, though?
I mean, yeah, it was part of a sexual assault. Like a larger, sexual,
Okay, if you put it that context, yeah, I guess I get it. During this time in '95, he gets connected with Suge Knight. Basically, what's happening is he's got medical expenses piling up. He's got his legal defense piling up. His mother's struggling, and he's been bankrolling a lot of outreach programs at this time beforehand. So he's really strapped for cash. So in exchange for signing on with Death Row Records, Suge Knight
with Death Row is because it was Death Row versus Diddy's label.
Yes, Death Row. For signing on with Death Row, Suge Knight would basically pay his bail, and then he signed a deal where he was supposed to do 3 albums, And the first album that he does with Death Row is actually considered a double album, so he almost gets that done before his death, like the whole contract.
Right.
Which is, if you guys don't know, what usually will happen is you'll get contracted to do so many albums and paid up front. It's similar to a book series. If you write a book and they're like, hey, we want to order like 3 sequels, or we'll order 3 books from you because you're a really good author, and you'll get an advance on that, basically. And that's actually how a lot of artists stay in debt, because they'll be like, okay, well, you didn't make your money back. You can sign another contract, but you'll get even less this time, so we can try and make some of our money back. And it's just like, sometimes it'll be a lie because they will actually have made their money back, but they're just like, well, fuck you.
Yeah, it's just another example of how a lot of the music industry is extremely predatory and can.
So is the film industry, because like if you get what is that big movie that still hasn't made any money decades later that someone there's a very big famous movie that's very 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 popular that someone asked for royalties on instead, and supposedly that movie still has not made money to this day.
The greatest movie ever made, Super Mario Brothers movie.
The new one is actually pretty good, and it made a lot of money, but no, it's not that one.
Hey, my name's Luigi. This is Mario, and Luigi Mario. We're the Mario Brothers. Yeah.
We're just gonna skip over the really bad movie real quick. In June of '96, Tupac fires back at Biggie and his team and turned the attention up to 11, because during his song, during his diss track that he called "Hit 'Em Up," Tupac claims he slept with Biggie's wife.
Yeah. I remember that.
You say you remember this as if you weren't a negative -1 year old.
No, I don't. I remember hearing about like when I first like learned this story, like the general overview of this story. I listened to a podcast about fucking Sean, fucking Diddy, and they briefly went over this, and I remember this part.
And this really just led to a bunch of back and forth between the two record labels. I wanted to focus specifically on Biggie and Tupac, so I'm not going to get into the individual beefs and all that. But not even 3 months later, on September 7th, while in Las Vegas, attending the Bruce Sheldon versus Mike Tyson boxing match with Suge, unfortunately, Tupac would lose his life. So what happens is at 11:15 p.m., while at a stoplight, a white 4-door late model Cadillac pulls up and fires into the car. 4 bullets ended up hitting Tupac. One of them hit him in the arm, one of them hit him in the thigh, and 2 of them landed in his chest. And then he was taken to University Medical Center, Southern Nevada, where he was heavily sedated and put on life support. For 6 days, he was able to hang on to life, but unfortunately, on the 13th, he passed away from internal bleeding. And I kind of think at this point is where we realized this was just like, I think they had realized it had gone too far. At least Biggie did, because he was quoted in an interview with, what was the Jim Beam? I don't know if there was a specific magazine or something but the interviewer's name was Jim Beam, from what I understand. It's a funny thing. I kind of realized how powerful Pac and I was. 2 individual people, we waged a coastal beef. You know what I'm saying? One man against one man made a whole West Coast hate a whole East Coast, and vice versa. And that really bugged me out. Like, yo, dude, don't like me, so this whole coast don't like me. I don't like him, so my whole coast don't like him. If it let me know how much strength I have. So like what I'm trying to do now, I've got to be the one to try and flip it and take my power and flip it like, yo, because Pac can't be the one to try and squash it because he's gone. So I got to take the weight on both sides. I think he sobered up, basically. He was like, hey, it's all fun and games till someone dies.
Yeah, like oh shit, this isn't just us being dirty to one another anymore. This is like people are dying now.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that was like The thing about it was like, I'm not sure how much of this, like, yeah, I think Tupac genuinely thought Biggie was doing that, but I wonder how much of the beef was actually perpetuated not because they like still were at each other's throat, but just because of the publicity the beef got them at the time.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I figured was that this is all just being stoked in the background by publishers.
I would not be surprised. Um, Unfortunately, Biggie wouldn't really get a chance to try and end the beef, like the West Coast East Coast thing, because like his with Pac is done because like Pac's gone.
Right.
But on March 9th of 97, 6 months after Pac's death, while leaving a party hosted by Vibe magazine at Peterson Automobile Museum in LA, Biggie's SUV was waiting at a red light when a vehicle pulled up and opened fire. He also got hit by 4 bullets, but only a single one of the bullets was fatal. The fatal bullet entered through his right hip, which damaged his liver, colon, heart, and his left lung.
Mm-hmm.
Before it like stopped around in his left shoulder area. He ended up being taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where they worked. Cedars-Sinai, sorry. Where they were trying to save his life, but not even an hour after the shooting, he passed away. And it really kind of shows you how, like, this whole story in general, in my opinion, kind of like shows you how easily like things can flip on a dime. Like they were tight as hell, and then they hate each other, and then they let all the media like. I genuinely feel like if they hadn't let the media influence them, if they didn't like, if Diddy wasn't involved in all this shit, they might have put bygones be bygones at some point.
Yeah, because they were just two guys who like genuinely liked each other and might have had and were just kind of like coaxed into this. You know, had a one clash of egos, got coaxed into a rivalry, and people died because of it for money.
I honestly, it's like I have a love-hate relationship with a lot of not just social media, but like media in general, because it can be a really good to stay informed and all that, but it also, at a certain point, you're going to have your tilt, you're going to have your thing, and it's going to perpetuate things by keeping things in the public eye beyond where you really need it to be. Like, I genuinely think that if we don't have Diddy, we don't have the media playing up this beef and all that, they probably could have squashed it. Do you have anything to add, like the historical context, anything else from your end?
No, just
Fuck Diddy.
fuck P Diddy, fuck Sean Combs.
This man deserves to get put in a prison cell and let be taken out like a chomo. Specifically P Diddy, just so the audience is aware. I was not talking about.
He was talking about me.
No, I didn't want them to get confused. They think I was talking about any of our two subjects today.
Man, it didn't have to happen. It just didn't.
I like to think there's a timeline out there where this ended up being a lot cooler and they lived in a lot. There's a timeline out there where like not Diddy, but Tupac and Biggie actually stayed friends and like made a lot of great music, and we didn't have to deal with the East Coast West Coast bullshit.
They're both they're just both fantastic musicians.
Alrighty, Derek. Oh yeah, agreed. So real quick, I listened to a couple YouTube videos that were supposed to be documentaries, but they weren't really. It was just people kind of summarizing stuff. So kind of similar to what we do, but whatever. I'm going to see if I can't find my watch history to find a couple of the videos. Yeah. So I watched how Tupac and Biggie became deadly enemies by Music Vibe. I don't know if it's their original video or not, but that's another thing I noticed with documentaries and such like that. It's not usually it's sometimes re-uploaded and stuff like that, so I can't guarantee you that's like original content or not. But that's what I listened to, and then there was another one by here it is. Hip hop content, Tupac versus Biggie from Friends to Enemies. It was just a really small one too. And then the majority of my information actually came from 3 different articles from biography.com. They've got one specifically on the Biggie Tupac beef, and then Tupac and Biggie's individual pages as well. Final words before we go off for the night, Derek?
No, just listen to some hip hop. It's really good.
For sure. Go listen to some Pac or Biggie, guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna go listen to some Biggie tonight.
Hell yeah. Where can they find you on the social medias, Derek?
They can find me on Blue Sky at Visigoth. The O is a 0. And Tim, where can they find the other important stuff?
So they can find me at Tim, aka Otis, on Blue Sky, but they can also find the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at the Alexander Society Pod, Alex Society Pod on Blue Sky, and Alexander Society on TikTok. If they've enjoyed what they've listened to, please give us a rate and review for next time, and we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.